I'm the director of Furnace. My job is to work very closely with the artists and to help them develop their work and their relationships with the community, and then to find the very best way of presenting that work.
Each year we partner up with 5 different communities and we place a local artist in with them, and they do a 9-month residency to make a piece of work that's with, for and about that community.
And those communities are communities who traditionally have low arts engagement.
Furnace is a programme to engage adults with creating theatre.
There was a piece called Sparkbrook Dreaming that was made by Amira Saleh from Sparkbrook, the area in which her piece was based. She, along with a sort of team of community volunteers, all of whom were quite young, set about collecting the dreams of the residents of Sparkbrook. She made a sort of portrait gallery of photographs of the people who had contributed these dreams. And alongside that, she wanted to gather people together to share some of those dreams live, and then also encourage people to contribute their own dreams.
I was already thinking about me being an artist from that area and how I could then give back to the community that I've been in for so long. We put all the stories into characters and we built from there.
So today we recited about 15 different dreams from people of Birmingham and had people talk about their dreams and aspirations when they were younger.
To cultivate that and create a space where people can dare to dream, I feel like that's such an important thing.
The whole environment was very friendly and personal and intimate, basically, and it just made the whole thing feel like a massive family occasion.
And the ultimate ambition of that piece, which will carry on going, is that bit by bit by bit, the gallery gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that somehow the piece of work expands by people connecting to it, which is sort of a really brilliant metaphor for theatre. That is what theatre is that it can only expand and grow if people connect with it. There was a piece by Selena Thompson called We Come Pave the Streets with Gold, and Selena again is an artist who's from the area she worked in, so she's from Erdington. So she was in the Welcome Cafe in Erdington High Street, and she was really interested in the beginning of the emergence of a cafe culture in Erdington. So she ran a tea morning there where people were able to come and talk about the history of Erdington. And then at the Welcome Cafe she curated a space in which Polish men who were suffering from depression were able to come and share their stories.
We are here today at We Come and Pave the Streets with Gold in Erdington.
And it's been really successful.
Yeah, and most important of all, we serve them tea and cake.
Oh, isn't it lovely to have something that stimulated people to actually bring a real sense of community, which is the whole purpose of what that cafe is meant to be, to bring and the revitalised church is actually to try and engage with the community and bring the community up. People often don't think they've got anything to offer, and I think that their memories are like gold dust, and put together, then you get a street paved with gold.
I can't top that answer. That's brilliant, that's perfect, that's exactly what we were hoping for.
That's what you can do in a space like this. You can make something which really makes people curious and really draws them in, and it can be part of wider social aims, and that's super exciting.
The third piece was Hannah Graham's piece, Where Y'all From, which took place in the Disused shopping centre in West Bromwich. And again, Hannah is from, although doesn't live there anymore, was born and brought up in West Brom. And she did a lot of work with the YMCA in West Bromwich. And she was again interested in the way in which the High Street has changed as the communities of West Bromwich have changed over the last 15 years.
The final piece was an amalgamation of about 10 stories I gathered in the time I was working in the community. When people came to see it, it was a conversation that they could almost listen in on, of all these different cultures talking to one another, about one another, with one another.
We got mint, we got blueberry, we got cherry, we got apple, we got cupcake divine, we got red wine, and we got peach.
There's a real something magic that's happening in the Black Country that all people that live there have to be proud of, and that's this sense of community.
And you call me the Black Country.
Fourth piece was by Susie Sillett that happened at the Nansen Primary School. Nansen has been through an extraordinary change. It was one of the schools that was at the forefront of the Trojan horse scandal about 6 or 7 years ago, and since then has had this extraordinary new teaching staff and has built its curriculum around arts. So she wrote a fictional story with the children.
What was particularly important was this welcoming feeling that I felt every time I went in. For the final piece, the audience all gathered in reception, and then I had a group of children, and I would introduce the audience. I'd say, welcome, and these children would rush in and would tell us to hurry and that we needed to come along with them so the audience doesn't know what's going on. And they lead you through an area that's got sort of graffiti boards on the walls. They're telling you that they'd been trapped at the school. They haven't been able to get out. The school's taken on a life of its own. And yeah, it was just really exciting because they're such an incredible school. and so creative and so willing to learn. The parents, they became very invested in the show. Because it's not scripted, their child gets to be a star of the show, or as much or as little as they want to. The commissions made me much more confident. Yeah, and it's given me a lot of ideas of how to run things in the future, how to do things differently.
And the fifth piece was by Alex Eldon, who was our Associate Director here, working with the Deaf Community Centre in Ladywood. We were really working with a group who met there regularly, and there was a couple of moments that were sort of spoken, but on the whole it was without voice. We didn't offer a translation for people who don't read BSL, and what was extraordinary about it, of course, was that he absolutely succeeded in making a piece that was accessible for everybody.
The piece was called The Meeting. It was a work in progress. And it told the story of a community group of deaf people that meet to start a choir, a deaf choir. So they try and sing together through feeling vibrations. And I worked with an associate director who came up through our Foundry artist development scheme called Nyasha Gudo, who's a really promising young director from Birmingham.
It was very intense at the start. I'd never experienced that world before, so hearing their stories and hearing what they'd been through felt like a privilege, because not a lot of people in our society all got to interact with a lot of deaf people.
Oh, all of it was my favourite bit, really, especially working with Alex.
It is the role of a theatre in a city to really profoundly examine what its relationship is with that community. So our connection to Birmingham has always been really profound, quite rightly, as any regional theatre's relationship should be to its region. But what Furnace does really specifically, I think, is allow communities to feel like their stories are important. You find and discover stories and voices that you wouldn't find in any other way.
There's this massive sense of fulfillment you feel when you see that the goals you placed were being achieved and that people were slowly getting comfortable and talking to each other.
I just think the energy in that room, it was amazing. And you know, I think it's always great when we have like loads of people coming together to work on something together, because we all have something to give. Yeah, it's just been a fantastic experience, I feel. It's been an amazing opportunity. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah. You get stories that I don't think people would go home and invent when they're sitting in the room on their own. You get stories from a very different perspective and told in a very different way. I think that those things can only happen by the coming together of people who would not necessarily meet in other circumstances, and it's one of the great pleasures of theatre.